vinyl, I mean, you know, like the stuff that went around in circles, it's electronic, I remember that.
Yeah.
That was a long time ago.
It was, but as a matter of fact, it's the same equipment from 40 years ago, with the exception of the turntable.
So, you go, how far, what kind of range do you to go to the events?
Well, I live in a complex, so far, it's just been low, less than 5 miles travel.
Okay.
But, if there's a need for me to go 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 miles, no problem.
Yeah. Interesting, yeah. Okay, what kind of business?
Oh, so I have a residential property management business for 25 years in San Francisco, which I sold last year to fund my new venture, which is a product that I brought to market just last year called the compost collector. Different world.
No, really, not in San Francisco, it's not, because all the commercial property has to have compost makers so they find the owners.
Oh, so there was a law that went into effect at the beginning of this year called SB 1383.
Yeah.
It requires all jurisdictions in California to provide curbside pickup.
Oh, okay.
So my vessel sits on your kitchen counter to collect your food scraps, and you toss the whole thing on garbage day.
So how do you make money?
Well, so I'm here to kind of figure out, like, you know, in the start of my business, and did I set things up right, and, you know, just trying to see what I missed.
And so, are your containers gonna go in front of houses?
Yeah, so everybody in this room can go on my website and purchase one right now. We set it up as a subscription basis as well, so you get it monthly. I'm trying to sell bulk to the municipalities and property management companies.
And your product is the container,
Yes.
and then not the content.
Correct.
The contents is temporary, you can move it.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah, people have tried to get me to do compost in my yard, and I don't know. A lot of people like different things, but it kind of reminds me of a stomach, where everything is broken down into particles.
Yep, well, it's the law now, so we should all be composting.
I design creative spaces in people's homes that are organized and optimized for whatever kind of creative expression they want to.
Krista, creative, she's so creative, artistic and stuff all over, oh, wow. So you figure what kind of creative whether they want,
Yeah.
oil, paints,
So even you can think even more broadly than that. So,
I'm
like
not thinking very well at all, but that's okay.
I have a client who works from home and has a home office.
Yeah,
But they also are play music, they design things with play, so they need their space to be very flexible, so they can move between working at their desk and
Oh,
then
I got
having
it.
a fun creative space where they're designing things, and then sometimes they want to be able to incorporate that into their business by webcasting what they're doing.
okay, so, can I summarize and just say that you're an interior designer for creative space? Is that-
Yes, yes.
That's exactly what it is?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I know anything about that. Cool. So, I've given you the slides, and I'm not gonna put them up on the board. What I'm gonna do is go through materials. We have, going through like entity structure, funding, then my bias on entities, different types of business entities, and then we get into tax and staying out of trouble. Hello.
Hello.
Grab one of those stacks
Yeah.
of paper on the left side
Right over here, yeah, and the sign-in sheet as well.
and sign your house away on the law school.
Okay.
Protect your deeds there. So, when you start a business, there are a lot of things you do, a lot of suggestions, and not everybody does all of them. One of them is plan your business.
I'm sorry.
Plan, P-L-A-N, and kind of get, you know, a structure of where you're going, what you're trying to do. good to think through the different pieces. It helps. Another part of what I consider planning is observing other companies doing what you do. That's really helpful. I remember when I first started in the tax business, I do income tax, wills, trust, and estate. What we, but Krista also has a business baking cakes, nested events. Just found these really neat poppers that go up like this, shoot one flames in the sky. So, if you can find somebody who's doing what you're doing now and talk with them, usually they're willing to talk. So I remember talking to the old time income tax guys and finding out what they're doing and why and other things. And if you're concerned, like there's too many DJs in this one neighborhood, you say, well, then you go talking to people outside of your area, so they don't feel like you're gonna be competing with them. And they might be a little bit more, open with, yeah, you wanna really do things, kind of deal. But planning is, important because there's so many different pieces to a business, and whether you're gonna take a big chunk of money and plunk it down, or do it a little bit at a time. I've been in several businesses, and I kind of tend to get started and then find out what the market is, and then figure the market's always right. You want this? Yeah, okay, you can have it. I'll give it to you. And that becomes a sale because you just solve somebody's problem. So planning, financing, entities, register your company name. If you need a fictitious business name, look at location, or you gotta work at home, or get a commercial space. Less and less buildings or businesses are using commercial space now. What kind of licenses, permits, tax info, registration requirements. So I have to allocate some time to do some research. There's quite a bit of market research information available. Google has some research databases on different markets, and you know, is your product or service for high-end individuals? Is it, you know, middle income? How is you know, working class customers? Find out what your economics are. They have charts on what economics are by zip code. And writing out a business plan will cover more of that. And then sometimes it's a good idea to get a second opinion on, I want this kind of business entity, and I'm thinking of doing this other. One thing that I'll come back to is just one of my little observations is, see it on TV and YouTube and different places is, oh, you want a business, well, make it official, get an LLC. That really has nothing to do with anything. It doesn't make it official, and it doesn't make it a business. You just register for something you didn't need, perhaps. What's your reasoning for wanting the business? You want a part-time income, retirement income, to make a fortune? You know, what kind of staff, help, technical skills you need? Put a lot of pieces together. Nobody seems to have all the skills. So on page 6 is kind of a table of contents of a business plan. page number is on the lower right of the landscape page. So, you don't write the executive summary until you're done. Describe your business, what are the advantages, what kind of industry or market are you serving? You have no staff, you're gonna make everybody in your family work, so they don't have any free time. And everybody's just happy, we're all working for nothing. Or hopefully it's profitable, but, yeah, you have to figure the impact on a family. Sometimes it impacts the following, Thanksgiving, that maybe the business work was too much. The person in charge was too grumpy. It's a fact. What kind of product description, service, what kind of, marketing plan you're gonna come up with? I found something just recently called thinkwithgoogle.com. And it's got a good resource of, market research and analysis on different economic strategies. How are you gonna get your money and get your business going? Fundraising. That's with a D, not just an and, fundraising. So some people might wanna do, try crowdfunding, or friends, neighbors. One thing that most people would never do, but, you form an entity and you get stock certificates and you go around trying to sell them. No can do. There's securities laws that will come right in. They call it blue sky legislation. So figure out where you're gonna, borrow money, an SBA loan. I really hesitate for people to borrow money on equity on their house. It's more stable and secure to have equity in your house than it is to keep a business going. They tend to be more volatile. And part of the, oftentimes the, business plans are used to show to other people, maybe to bring in investors, bring in partners, bring in, co-conspirators, people helping in the business. And they get an idea of what you're trying to do. I remember one time, in scuba, a guy came over and was gonna tell me about, opening a scuba shop, and I didn't realize the first half hour that he was selling me, digging in my pocket, money in his business. But I finally figured that out. He opened it, he did pretty well, it was none of my funding, but, he did well. So on page 7, there's locations for possible funding sources, small business development centers. The small business loan guarantee program, you hear a lot about the SBA loans. It's not free money. You get an SBA loan and you have a house, you have a sneaking way of putting this note in a second deed of trust on your house, just to encourage you to pay it off. You know, for some reason that note secured against the title, nobody forgets about. There's financial development corporations, there's a lot of access to funding. The majority of small businesses don't go to big time funding outfits, it's like so you hear a lot about funding sources, for small business aren't there. Perhaps if you've got a real, attractive startup that, could, attract investment capital, that might work. Then on, page 8.
Actually, can I ask a question about?
No, we're not allowing any questions, what do you wanna know?
For like a small business loan, what's the sort of typical range that people work within?
talking about the dollar amount of borrowing, there is no typical, because every business is unique, and what do you need, what, to get.
I'm assuming people don't take out $100 million loans for SBA.
I would assume that too, because they would have difficult even implementing the funding, if they got the funds. You kinda have to work backwards, see what you think is needed, what it might take to get it rolling, and then work backwards to funding and options like that. The chances of getting a complete startup and getting a whole bunch of money is very unlikely. Usually when you get investors, that's what we talk about now, is angel investors and things of that nature. They wanna, not just an idea, ideas don't have value. You take idea in motion, and then it might have value if it solves a need, gets, consumer acceptance. But, I think the answer to your question most directly is, what do you need, why do you need it, how come you need it now? Why can't you get the business going and not spend all that? Prove your idea. Okay, I've had several times clients come in and this one family in particular, they were gonna start a business, and he had some great idea, had to do with a construction project. And so he formed a business entity and got it all started, and pretty soon I didn't hear much about it. Nothing going on. And what happened, well, you know, it didn't go through a full cycle, and then that idea went away, and then 2 or 3, 4 years later, they came back and they had another product, a business he wanted to start, bring somebody else in, and wanted me to form his business entity. And I said, well, what have you been selling so far? Oh, well, we haven't started selling anything. We need to get everything set up first. And I said, how about you go out and try to sell some of this fantastic stuff that you're talking about, and then come back. Didn't hear back. I don't know, maybe it just didn't sell that well, I don't know. So, did that answer it or not? Too vague? But let's back it into what are you trying to do and funding?
Well, I mean, it was more a hypothetical question. Let's say I had a new idea for a concrete formulation and had to build a concrete plant. I assume you would not do that through like SBA, you would do it through more, angel, venture capital, that sort of thing.
I know exactly how I do it. Is nail down your component parts, get the mix and provable and demos, and demonstrations, create videos explaining what a fantastic job this stuff does and how it's more efficient, light, floats in water, doesn't get mold on it, and then start talking to contractors. I wouldn't even start with the factory. What I would start with is a product that demonstrates what your end result is, and then develop interest in your end result. Talk to a bunch of concrete. It's interesting because that one, I've just been doing a bunch of research on putting in, pavers versus concrete versus molds versus a number 2 ground underneath and smooth it out, put rock on top, all kinds of fun stuff. But yeah, I would just start with your mix. Because that sounds like the essence of what you're doing.
Sorry, that was purely, I'm not interested in concrete. I know it a little bit, but the example was what I assume would be a high capital requirement.
You would assume, but I don't assume that. My uncle had a gravel pit up in Clear Lake, and he just got access to a creek and some crushers. And he was pushing that stuff out and selling it to contractors around the lake. Come up with something a little bit more concrete, maybe we can pull it apart. Angel investors. percent of people go with a larger funding and, third party. Angel investors are people that, put money in a startup, usually for a percentage of ownership. And what you end up with, in order to find, there are groups of angel investors. And so they're looking to put money in and they're not gonna work, don't call them on Saturday if you need help. No, they just give you your money and when do I get my money back? No problem. There's a term that you would need to be aware of, and it's called an accredited investor. Accredited investor on page 8. And they have to have a net worth over $1 million plus income over 200,000 or 300,000 for a couple. And then when they invest in your business, they're not at really risk of not eating for the next month because they've got enough assets. And so this term is from the Securities and Exchange Commission. And if you start taking big chunks of money from people who are not accredited investors, you can run afoul of the securities laws. And it's criminal because they want to protect the investors. But somebody who's accredited with that kind of net worth, they're on their own. It's not like the government is as much out to protect them. A couple of them I've listed there are groups of individuals like that. Band of Angels, Tech Coast Angels, Sacramento Angels. And then there's, in the middle of page 8, there's a list, California Angel Investors. That you would basically take your business plan and projections and pitch it to them and see if they wanted to invest. The ones I'd stay away from asking for investment funds are the Hells Angels because their interest rates are just way too high. Then there's venture capitalists. Venture capitalists they're a different level, and they're not as interested in startup. I mean, they want to see a company that's going a little bit, it's showing some growth, showing some momentum, is pushing uphill, and looks like it's going somewhere before the venture capitalists get involved. There's a really neat book from John Dewar. He helped get Google going. D-O-E-R-R, something, John Dewar. It has to do with venture capital firms. It's fascinating. They come in, evaluate management and operations and quality control and different things. And then on the bottom page 8, I've given you a list of several areas where you could contact venture capitalists. And essentially what you're doing with these investor groups is, we started out talking about a business plan. So you develop this document, explanation, examples, and then your idea is to get in front of them and explain what a fantastic deal that they give you $500 million so that you convert it, and start generating a profitable business from that point. I have heard people use crowdfunding. I've never been involved in it directly. Patreon, some other ideas. Then on page 9, talking about business entities. A lot of chatter about this particular area, how you're going to run your business. The sole proprietorship is basically you. You might file a fictitious business name in the county and advertise it, but it's not a separate entity. You use your own social security number good way to go, especially on a startup, because you just start selling, you know, producing, selling, and consulting, whatever you're doing, and you don't gotta have a lot of cumbersome legal structure. You just start a business, you got a business name, you got a business account, you're off and running. The other one, a limited liability company, that one's real popular, more so lately, and it's a unique, it's a combination between a corporation and a partnership, came out in the 90s. What I don't like about it is the advertisements say that, you know, you're not really a business unless you're an LLC. I can't tell you how many people I've come across that own LLCs. They say, well, where's your business? Oh, well, no, I'm just paying $800 a year for nothing. So I like to stay with it. That's what it costs. $800 a year to be on the mailing list to have those three initials. I think it'd be more productive just to start a sole proprietorship and skip that step.
So in the sole proprietorship, that would just be one person, not several people?
Yeah, what happens on the sole proprietor is it's one person who's your social security. And then, let's say you bring in a friend to work, you put him on the payroll, it's still a sole proprietor. You said, oh, we're gonna share profits, oh, now you have a different entity, now you have a partnership. And then people will tell you, oh, you got a partnership, oh, you got all this liability. Oh, then you gotta have an LLC, you know, then you get into all that stuff. But, sole proprietor's a very respectable way to get started. You file a fictitious business name in the county clerk, and then you're required to have advertising in a newspaper in general circulation. Don't pick the East Bay Times, it costs way more than you get the cheapest podunk newspaper you can find, because you don't care what that advertising is all about. It just says, my business, okay, so I'm gonna start a business called Sugar Daddy, so I'm gonna be Sugar Daddy. So I can't use that because it's not on your commercial. So I have to get a fictitious name and I fill it out, go to the county, record it, then I go to the newspaper. Around your age, Contra Costa News Register, Martinez Civil, and I give them the papers and say, hey, this is Rex, I'm doing business at Sugar Daddy, and advertise this for us. They do that, and you won't be able to open a bank account until you go through that process in the business name. So, I think to test business ideas, sole proprietor is
What about for insurance? Say I go into somebody's house and I insure shelving and it falls on their kid,
Yeah.
then,
Okay, so what you have here is, you want liability insurance for your company. Yeah, and you describe what the risks are for your insurance company.
and then
Yeah, I'm
thinking
not.
about between sole proprietor and LLC in that instance.
I understand the question, yeah. So, with the sole proprietor, you say, okay, the chandelier gave the kid a bruise on his forehead, now you're getting sued for $100,000. This is a rich kid. They went to the sole proprietor, yeah, okay. And that's what the insurance is for. And another way for the business insurance to work well is you get business liability insurance at a certain fixed cost, but then you get an umbrella policy above that. And now you're doing pretty good for protection, even on sole proprietor. What they try to tell you on the LLC is that, oh, you need this for liability, don't risk your personal assets. So you gotta have an LLC. Show you how it really works. You have an LLC and you're operating a business, like, we act as agent for service and process for entities, that any entity has to have somebody to accept legal payments. We do that for them. We just had one where the LLC got sued because one of their customers died on the project. It's very serious. And what happens is, the LLC will protect you from liability. Oh, really? Let me show you how it works. The LLC gets sued, you expect that. And then they sue the owner along with it. And the owner goes to court and says, you can't sue me, I'm an LLC. And the judge says, we'll let you know if we let your name off the case. They won't. Another problem with it is, as a sole proprietor, if you get sued, you can represent yourself. Fill out papers, file them. Judge, I gotta tell you, that shelf was made out of styrofoam, and we only had a coffee cup on it, and the kid said that, and he ran his head into something else. It wasn't my styro cup. You can go in and talk to the judge. Okay, you got an LLC or a corp, you go in and try to talk to the judge and they won't talk. You cannot represent yourself without being an attorney on a business entity. So I'll take the one, the death on the job one. So the person gets sued as an LLC, gets sued as an individual. And the judge won't let them off, and they can't talk to the judge unless they have an attorney. Well, they're gonna lose by default. You didn't respond to the papers. So then they say, well, this isn't right. I shouldn't have liability because they told me on that dumb commercial that I wouldn't have liability. Then you say, oh, well, you just have to hire an attorney. So then they want $45,000 up front to represent you on the LLC. Where are we? And that's even before any liability is determined. The misunderstanding of limited liability for corporations and for LLCs is that if you have an LLC or a corporation and you have assets on the books and you have liabilities on the books, like say you have a corporation and you've leased space, and so that's a liability for the corporation itself or LLC. You don't pay it at the entity level. They can't sue you personally because it was a liability within the entity. Does that make sense? So the LLC took out the lease. The corporation signed the lease. The corporation owned the car that ran over this troop of Girl Scouts. And so that was part of the assets within the entity. And that, the way the law works, is supposed to protect you from liability. Unless they sue you as the owner. So to me, it just irks me when I see those ads. You're not gonna have any liability. I don't agree with that at all. It's, like on that one with the wrongful death one, I mean, they sue the owner, they sue the LLC. Okay, you're in. I mean, there's no, it's not like a reflecting shield. And obviously, it's supposedly better than being a sole proprietor, but I wonder. If a sole proprietor has a big problem like that, they don't have the money for the law representation, they can still go in and talk. In these entities, the judge says, I'm sorry, I can't talk to you at all. You're not represented. You have to have an gonna protect you, until something happens, yeah. Okay, so, we talked about sole proprietorship, fictitious name, recorded in the county with your name, you advertise it. The limited liability company, you have to form those with the Secretary of State. Become a separate legal entity, you have a separate federal ID number. And you get to pay $800 a year. Get to, like it's a privilege, just to be on the mailing list. And, if you have a single member LLC, they're called disregarded entities, that you don't have to do a separate tax return for federal. On a sole proprietorship, you fill out a Schedule C on a personal tax return. There's income, then you got expenses by categories, pretty straightforward. Schedule C, then you go to net income. The net income goes two ways. One way, it goes to just the income tax. The other way, it goes to self-employment tax, which is your Social Security. For your retirement. Just like when you have wages. And that, the income expense goes on Schedule C. When you get over to the self-employment tax, that goes on Schedule S, Sierra. On the LLC, if it's one owner, it disappears on your federal tax return. They let you show it on your Schedule C, like it didn't exist on federal. And then on state, with the limited liability company, the state is, let's say, enthusiastic about taxing. So they want you to file another form to find out if there's any excuse in the world why they could tax you more. And so you have another tax return now due to the franchise tax board, even with a one-member LLC. So is this stuff too I mean, is it, it's real technical stuff? Is it making sense a little bit?
Yeah.
Trying to judge if it's, I'm explaining it clearly or not. So, if you have single member LLC, it disappears on federal, it just goes in like it was a sole proprietor. On state, you got a separate return. If you have more than one owner on an LLC, then you have a whole separate tax return for federal, a whole separate tax return for state. And that's a factor that these people talk about, just having an LLC. You also got a separate tax return you have to pay for. And that's in addition to the $800 a year. It might be another $700 to $900 a year for the LLC's tax return for more than one person. Then we have a couple kinds of corporations. The normal corporation, like most major corporations, they have income, they have expenses, and then the net income gets taxed at the corporate level for federal and for state. And then you as one of the owners want to get your money out. So say, I'll give you some of my money, I earned it. You take it out, it's called a dividend. You got taxed again. The entity got taxed. Now you want your money, okay, get taxed again for dividend. It's called a C corp. And those used to be real popular, they're not as popular right now. I hate it with my clients that have those that, I'm worried they're gonna have to pay tax on that net and dividends. So what I do is I make sure that they have payroll. And it just so happens that that payroll uses up all their net income. businesses don't have a net income, why not? Because we took out payroll. Now there's no double tax. Because the income came in, the payroll got peeled off like it normally would, and there's nothing left to be taxed. Because it's gone. And we took it as a payroll expense, it just happens to compensate the owner. You have a question? No, okay, sorry, I didn't mean to work that. Then there's another kind of corporation. First of all, let me back up. Whenever, there's legal people and then there's natural people. So natural people or natural persons are like, you have a baby, it goes wham, everybody goes, oh, how cute. That's a natural person. And we have legal persons. Legal persons. Well, they're not born in hospitals. They're usually born in the Secretary of State's office. And they call them LLCs, courts, nonprofits. And the reason why they're legal persons is they're a separate legal entity from the owner. They have a separate ID number. And they can sue, be sued, make contracts, and so they're apart from any natural being. So those are legal persons. And most business entities are such. And so, we're not on it, but trusts. Revocable trusts are non-entities. They're like a rice paper wall, you put your hand through it, there's nothing there. But once a trust becomes irrevocable, let's say if somebody died, and the trust was irrevocable, now it is a separate legal entity. Has to have a separate ID. Might have to have separate tax. And there's no law that says you cannot run a business under a trust. You can do it. People don't think of it. Fact is, in the 1800s, one of the first corporate type entities was a Massachusetts business trust.
What would be the benefit?
Say again?
What would be the benefit?
One of the benefits is you don't have $800 a year for nothing, on somebody's mailing list. The other is it confuses hell out of creditors. Okay, so a creditor say, well, the trust signs up for a lease. You got a business trust, okay? Signs up for the lease. Well, who's personal liable? Well, the trust. Well, there's a settlor, there's a fiduciary or trustee, and then there's beneficiaries. It gets quite confusing. Who's liable for what? And there's no prohibition. In order for it to be a separate legal entity, though, it has to be irrevocable, not changeable. Your normal estate planning trust like you have. There's no, if you started a business with a revocable, changeable trust, it'd be a sole proprietorship. If you have an irrevocable trust, running a business or doing any economic activity, when you have over $600 of income, you have to do a 1041 fiduciary protection. Different. Yeah, it works, there's no problem with it. Okay, some of the other things where you don't see too much, general partnerships, 2 or 3 people get together and form almost nothing, and they're all personally liable for all the assets and events. You don't see them too much, but limited partnerships, they're kind of run out of style with the LLC. So you have one general partner, and then everybody else was an investor. And they wouldn't have absolutely no liability, they just have the money that they put in to the limited partnership. Okay. So if we go to, see my notes. self-employment income on a Schedule C, so you got income expenses, net income, tax normally, and then, self-employment tax for your social security. The tax feature for an S corp is that you can get out of paying self-employment tax after you take out a reasonable salary. So, the way that this works is, you have the income, you have the expenses, and then the net income. And that comes out to the owners on a Form K-1, like a W-2. And if you took out a reasonable salary for the owners, that income that goes to the shareholders is only taxed once. And so you're saving about 15–16% of tax. And the IRS watches that one quite a lot because people will set it up and not take a proper salary. So they beat the government out of the self-employment tax. Yes, ma'am.
What's considered a proper salary?
That's $64,000 question. What would somebody, what kind of business would you start? Give me an example. Hypothetical.
Fertilizer business.
Okay, so you're gonna be selling a product. Okay. So you have income, you have expense, you have your materials. What would somebody working in a retail or wholesale business, what would they get paid for doing that kind of work? That's a question, there's no real answer to it. And that's the argument with the IRS. What, they pick off a lot of those by line 7 on the corporate tax return. It says owner salary. And if it says 0, it's a red flag. It's not reasonable, there's nothing. So you start with that, what would you have to pay somebody to run that company? And it's debatable. I put on the tax return, I'll put in relation to what the business is doing. So if I've got a company that's earning, net of $450,000 a year, I'm not putting $10 on there. I would probably not put less than 100. So it's, there's no real answer. It's like trying to get an answer, what's a house cost? Yeah, depends. So you come up with something you can justify, and then you leave it.
So if you're a startup and all of your funding is going into your product, am I still gonna be, I don't have a salary.
Okay. Funding going into product, let me go a little further to understand. Is that product inventory, or is it developed? Oh,
So it was produced, it was developed, it was produced, and it's in inventory.
right. When you have, inventory, for your notes, write down beginning inventory plus purchases, plus on the next line down. Plus purchases, less ending inventory equals cost of goods sold. So if all of your money is going into inventory, you don't have any incoming out, there's nothing taxable. It's still there.
Yeah.
So in order to get cost of goods sold, you go on a financial statement, you have sales, okay, we leave it that for a second. We go through this computation, beginning inventory purchases, listing inventory equals cost of goods sold. Cost of goods sold is an expense that comes off of income. And now we go to operating expense. So if everything is stuck up into beginning inventory plus purchases, you don't have any expense. There on LLCs, you need a state license. Let's say you wanna start a hair salon, what else? It's gonna be, something that needs a state license. Department of Consumer Affairs, they don't want you to be an LLC. For some reason. So you would probably end up, if you wanted a separate legal entity, you'd probably end up with an S corp. I guess the state thought that if you need a state license, they don't want you to limit your liability. They want you to have liability. Okay, on page 13, I've kind of gone through this briefly. Single member LLC, on 11. Income goes on to 1040, Schedule C, and the self-employment tax. And then, multi-member LLC ends up with separate tax return for the federal and state. And you have the self-employment tax. On page 14, one of the most unusual taxes that I've seen is on the LLC, they tax gross sales. No other entity taxes gross sales. You don't care if you made any money or not. You have gross sales. You have the $800, and then when the sales goes over 250,000, you get another tax of 1.2%. And it adds up. So if you have a business, let's say grocery store, you just bought Trader Joe's or something. So you have high sales and low net. And the LLC doesn't work well in that context. Because it's getting taxed on that high sale that you're not getting really net from. So I had one client that had high sales and an LLC, and they were paying, instead of the $800 a year minimum, they were paying like $6,000 to $8,000 because of their sales. And I go, you guys are wasting money big time. We canceled the LLC, put them in an S corp, and they pay $800 every year. That's it. Because there's no gross sales. So the takeaway with that is if you have high sales and low net, you really don't want an LLC.
Did you say the tax rate is 1.2%?
Yes, of the gross. And that's in addition to every other tax they can think of. That's just on that particular transaction. Partnerships, I don't really want to cover all that. Unincorporated association, yes, skip that. You don't see them that much.
I have a question, why don't we see partnerships? You said it was these old school type of,
So, this gentleman asked, you got one person, we got, okay, sole proprietor, we got two people,
question, I think.
Okay, well, I got a word answer to go.
Fabulous, okay. So if I am a corporation or have a corporation, do I need to get a fictitious business name?
No. I tell you why, you do not.
Because it's the entity
Because-
itself, right?
Fictitious business name means it's not the name you were given.
Okay.
So if I form a corporation called Sugar Daddy, and then I'm gonna use that name, I don't need to get a different name. But if I don't like that name, I say, I want a different name, I wanna be, I didn't do it. That's my new business, I didn't do it. So I could have that name, I would just have to file a fictitious name and use that.
Right. So I had a fictitious, so I started my previous business as a sole proprietor and then I incorporated, bring on other people
Right.
and kept, because my fictitious business name was my property management company name, right? I moved it over, but we had a corporation name, so it was always the name of the corporation, DBA, the property management name.
I understand.
So, but
It
with my.
wasn't, if with the DRE license, you probably had that registered also with the.
Correct. The same way, yeah.
Yeah, but if it's, you're doing business under the name you were given by the Secretary of State, there's no reason to file a DBA.
Okay.
It doesn't give you any more mileage. And it creates no distinction. Purpose of that fictitious, meaning that it's not your given name. So it could be an individual doing business as something, an LLC doing business under a different name, a corporation doing business under a different name. But if you're using your given name, whether that's an entity or at birth, then skip that.
Thank you.
Another question.
Yeah,
When I file my DBA,
yeah.
does my name that I file with that DBA, does that become my name and no one else can take the name of my company? Or is there something else I have to do? Also, there's a stage name, how do I
I got
go
a few
about?
questions one at a time. I gotta answer them one at a time.
Okay.
Because I have a real narrow.
That's
reception
okay.
span. So let me do the first
The
one.
responses,
Yeah, yeah, because I get confused, you know. So you're filing a fictitious name, and what was the question again?
So that fictitious name, I want to be my name, because that's gonna be the name.
You wanna use it, okay, let me add to your
Okay.
sentence to say, I want it to be my business name.
Correct.
Right. So the fictitious name is filed, you do the advertising, it is your business name. Now you go to the IRS and we get them, or you get them on your own, you get a new federal ID number. And for sole proprietors, I always recommend getting a new federal ID number, even though there's no entity. And the reason is, you don't wanna use your social security number all the time. So you're working as, they say you're an independent contractor, oh yeah, I've got a trade name, give me your, social security, I wanna give you some 1099s because you need them. You say, okay, I'll give it to you, and you give them the federal ID number. Gives you a little bit of, insulation from identity. So, now we got that separate business name, and then you're going into how do I protect it? Correct. Yeah. So, several ways. I mean, there's a state trademark. There is a federal trademark. One way to protect it is get the only domain in the world with that name, you know, like mine, sugardaddy.com. I mean, that's not trademarked, and nobody else is getting it. So that's a third way. Another way is by usage. You've established it, so the trademark and copyright are the direct answers to that. So, and what happens in real life is you start using it for things. And you gotta plaster it all over the internet. search for Rex Crandell, stuff like that, there. And not too many other people that want that with names. It shows that it's being utilized. You could put TM on it, circle TM, scare people away. I think that the name is one thing, and the economics that it brings is something else. So if you're got a DJ business and you're doing well in your county, and somebody opens up a new DJ business and way down in San Diego, I'm not sure what impact that would have on you. And I'm not sure why it would bother you. So, one is how to protect it, pretty much. The other is what's the impact. If you form an LLC or a C Corp or a S Corp, California is not gonna let another one come in now. So it's not a trademark, but they're not gonna allow, I wanna do business as Coca-Cola Company. Good luck. You're not gonna, there's no way to record that. And so, those are several different levels.
Okay, so, and then the stage name,
Stage name. That's like a trademark copyright. Stage name could be a fictitious business name. Let's see, why not? Trademark, copyright, not a patent, but, the other thing in terms of names, sometimes I volunteer to have a probate court, here, Martinez, and, we have part of the probate calendar are name changes. And, it is super easy to change your name. It is like nothing. Fill out a form. Okay, what are you doing? Kind of like a fictitious business name. Fill out the form, say, I used to be, I did it, now my new name is I didn't do it. Okay, so I'm changing my name. File it, give it to the court clerk. Goes before the judge, you know, you have to advertise it, here again, like DBA. And I don't know how that would work into the stage name thing. I mean, in this case, it's really your name, now you go to DOB and have it in your stage name. So, I guess there it's, what name do you like the best? The one that parents gave you, or the one that maybe would be better for your business? Changing your first name is a piece of cake.
but that would all be taken care of in the same county office?
No. Fictitious business names are recorded in the county clerk recorder's office, and continues there in Escobar. So that's it, the fictitious business name. And then the, name change for a person, you file it at 725 Court Street, Room 103 in, the courthouse. And as soon as you file it, pay you whatever it is, $435. They give you a court hearing. Court hearing. Yeah, you get to talk to the judge. And they're real nice to name change people. I mean, what they do with name changes is, they've got a court calendar with cases. And they put all the name changes first. So they look at, did you file the form? Yeah. Did you do the advertising? Yeah. Did the advertising get back into the court file? Yeah. Everything's fine. So there's nothing left to do. The judge puts them up first so the judge can go, yes, 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 yes. And then they get into the more complicated type of stuff. And the judge doesn't change your name, man, what's this called? You met all the requirements, sure, you have a right to do that.
Okay, so I guess I wouldn't wanna change my name per se where we change on my license, but it would be just the name I use when I'm performing.
I'm giving you lots of options.
Same thing.
You pick it, and I don't know that if you left your license one way and never finished, and you had this, stage name, now you can have a bank account in that name, you could change your social security, you don't have to. So, then I don't know, who am I? Split personality. You decide on what you wanna do. I think the easiest is a fictitious business.
And just go with that.
And then call yourself that, you got a checking account on it, you put both names on it or whatever. And oftentimes on the checking account, it'll say, Rick Crandell, DBA, Landscape Services of America. So, both names are. That way, if somebody wanted to see an ID, you've got an ID for a person, they wanna see, okay, what's this Landscape Service America, you got a business card. So, you gotta cover both ways.
Not that difficult, but.
No, not, when any of those name change things, and fictitious names, the key function is you file the paper, you pay the advertising gave you approved, it might be once a week, or 3 weeks, or 4 weeks. You bring it into the bank, and say, hey, I want to open an account. Without a problem. Got every day. And you don't need an $800 a year entity to do that. You got, there's no cost except for the bank. So. I'm looking at, which reader, not So when you form an entity with the Secretary of State, LLC, or corporation, you have to file that for an agent for service and process, so that if you get sued or give it to a certain person beyond the service and cost, like $50 to $300 a year. And on the state business entities, you have to update that information every couple of years. So you gotta pay $25 to file this form, if you don't, they give you a fine for $250 stuff. And what are we talking about, the federal ID number? If you don't have a social security number, and you are not able to apply for one, you can get an ITIN, individual taxpayer ID number. And, we've gotten more from clients that are approved, the client had a business here in the US and Florida, so we got an ID number they can file their taxes. Then on, page 27, forming a business entity. If you, go on LegalZoom, they say, oh, let's make it official. You get a piece of paper and then everything else is on your own. On the last part of that page, if we're forming a legal entity for you, we give you all these different pieces so that you have a better understanding of your responsibilities as a business owner. Something you might run across, I've heard of, form a Nevada corporation and come in and do business in California, they're invisible. Guess again, doesn't work. Do business in California, you have to register to do business. It doesn't matter whether you formed it in 30 is a simple, fictitious business statement, name. Oh, and, before you get into opening bank accounts and stuff like that, when you file for fictitious business name or legal entity, your personal address and information become public record for any database search. So, some people really don't like having their personal residence listed on the internet. So, on page 32, you might want to consider renting mailboxes, etc., or postal annex, UPS, FedEx store. And what you're doing is, you're paying for the use of a business address that looks official, and it's not your own house. So I especially suggest that to women, they don't want the rubber man to come around and give them a bad time, so they say, well, here's my business address, and it's not the residence. Doesn't happen. And people will say, well, I'll just get a P.O. box at the post office. That doesn't work. Because you start shipping stuff, FedEx, UPS, and you start receiving shipments from Amazon, and they can't deliver to you in your P.O. box. They don't let the Amazon trucks park and go into the post office. So those don't work at all. Because of the shipping, you get the mail, and you get asked to forward it. But if you're doing outbound shipping, inbound, which every business ends up doing at some point, U.S. Postal Service is the work. It's all you can get is mail inbound.
So what do? Just give business, not business, location, put that address for that location?
Okay, so on page 32,
Yeah.
we have, example, one of them, postal annex. So you pay for a year's service for a postal annex, and they give you a mailbox, which is usually small and worthless. And then on page 32, you
I think it's page 28 on ours.
wow, somebody moved my number.
Sorry.
I'm sure glad you were like, huh, Krista, we're gonna have to
Oh,
fix that
yep,
one.
yep.
Thank you. So basically, you're paying for a third party to receive mail. And what they make a big deal, people are surprised about, when you do that, you're giving up your right, you can never forward your mail. It's part of that deal with the postal laws. So, there's one downtown Walnut Creek, 1699 North Main. And you can register your business to be there. Looks like you're there in all publications, whatever, that's the address. And then when you don't want to use that one anymore, you're not going to put a forwarding address in. It's just part of the downside of using a private mailbox service. So, but in the interim, it works really well to show that I'm in business. Hey, I'm right down there on Main Street. Now, hey, I'm doing well. You got all this room there to do all your work in. But it's really good to have that away from around. And when you have to have a business license with the city, whatever city you're working in, and they want to make sure you don't put a billboard on your front yard or something. Can't have advertising like that in a residential neighborhood. So if you have a business in your home and you have a postal annex, for example, address, you're not gonna, it's not an issue. payroll taxes. Virtually every small business that comes into my office, one or two owners will come in and say, we've talked about this already, and we're not gonna have any employees. We're just gonna have independent contractors. Virtually every one of them says it. They don't want the payroll. Guess what? It doesn't work. And a carpet contractor hired everybody's independent. Employment Development Department came in, said, what's on your payroll tax? They're all independent. No, they're not. He got charged all of their payroll tax. He got charged his payroll tax, and he should have withheld, plus big penalty. They went back 3 years. Huge amount of tax. Don't play independent contracting game. It's what it is. It's like, oh, I'll just say that they're independent. They got their own business. They don't. Half the time. Unless they're really a business that's established with business cards and location and website and things that make them a legitimate business, not somebody that you just ran into that you said they're independent. But the fact is so you say, well, I'm gonna follow the rules. I'm gonna give them a 1099. Then Employment Development Department gets the 1099 and they come in and audit you and they use the 1099 against you.
So what if you're using virtual assistants in another country?
Pretty cool, actually. Yeah, I like that.
So then I don't have employees, I'm not, but I do, I have team members.
Yeah, there are one of the things that I would say that people do is don't make checks out or payments to individuals. So you've got, somebody might be an individual, Jose the gardener. So you make it out to Jose the gardener, or Jose Gardener. Oh, that's, you look at the name, it even says it. That helps, because they go down the check register and they pull every one that says that's an individual name and payroll tax. Unless you can prove that they're not. But other countries, it's hard for them to pull them in to the Employment Development Department as a lack of jurisdiction. But it might also be easy for you to ask them, or you do what I just said, is put a business name in addition to their name. What are they doing? So we've got first and last name program, or something like that. It would be preferable to just put an individual name. Other questions?
One quick one.
Yes, right.
You file your paperwork in the county that you're doing the work in, correct? But I'm in Salama County. Just take care of my business, Salama County.
That's where you should do it. I have seen people say, well, I don't really want people to know where I'm at. So I'm gonna file a fictitious name in Fresno, and I never do it. Probably still work. But, in practicality, the way the rules are designed, you should be, a county resident. But, they're not required. So, yeah, payroll taxes are real problem.
So that's for the independent contractor, isn't it basically, you don't really have jurisdiction, like you're not supposed to give us direction, they're completely, quote unquote, independent, right?
There's a lot of theory, and you try to structure it. You have a contract, and you outline it. You make it as squeaky clean as you can they came out with this test, came out from a court case at first, and then they put it into statute. It's called ABC test, and, that's how, you know, they got, a lot of the Uber drivers, with them as employees. And the government looks at it like they're helping people because they're being on payroll. And you're looking at it like, God damn, that's gonna cost me a lot of payroll taxes. I don't see that as a benefit. But the government's the one who's assessing it. And, if somebody, you know, is in fact in their own business, they've got cards, they have business licenses, they have all the trappings, and you don't have to make a check out to their individual names. Okay, sounds like an independent contractor to me. And then if it's, over $600 a fee, which you're supposed to issue it, the 1099 NEC. And then they pick that up as self-employment. In theory. You can't control what they do. But the IRS takes every 1099, puts it through their computer, goes out and looks at the tax return, and if it's not there, they send them a bill. Just a bookkeeping systems. What fun subject that is. So, whenever your business, don't delay and do keep up the bookkeeping system, use QuickBooks. You gotta sort out your income and expenses by categories. So at the end of the year, it's not all a jumble mess. Just sort things by groups. We get people in that just hate bookkeeping, they just don't wanna do it. So what do? They mess it up. They don't do their bookkeeping. They wait till the end, they wait till the last minute. And then they complain and moan and they mess it up and they're still complaining. And so I call that the self-fulfilling prophecy. I didn't like it, I wanted it to be horrible, so I made it horrible for me. Yeah, and now I've reasserted that I was correct to begin with. I messed it up. But if you take a different approach and take your books and every month with the bank reconciliation, sort out all your expenses by category, add in your cash expenses, report in the cash income. Some people are surprised to hear that when you get paid cash, it's not taxable. Guess what? That's a myth. It's wishful thinking. It's not true. So if you do your books every month, it's a little bit of burden, and at the end of the year, it's a piece of cake. When you enter in your stuff in QuickBooks, you only touch it once. You don't have to go back. The software will spin it into reports for you. In this real rudimentary bookkeeping on page, to me it's page 44. I may be mistaken.
You gave them
40?
water cool.
40. Okay, thank you. It shows a profit and loss statement. This is the most important statement for you as a business owner. So you've got your revenue, and this particular one shows the cost of goods sold, like inventory we talked about. And then the expenses by categories. And you should take a look at that every month. Because that way you know if you're winning or losing. And there's two kinds of accounting systems, basically. One is accrual, and there's cash. Small business use the cash method, which means money coming in is taxable. Expense, expense. Gone out, it's expense. The other type of accounting is called accrual, A-C-C-R-U-A-L. And that one, you send an invoice and it's taxable. You get a bill in the mail and it's an expense. That doesn't work for a small business very well at all. So, stick with the cash basis. I'm gonna leave the marketing and the internet presence, to your own, I don't really cover a lot of the internet marketing stuff. You have, retail sales, you have to charge sales tax. If you're selling to a third party who's not yet a consumer, and they sell it again, then what you have to get is, a resale exemption card. And it's a big deal because the State Board of Equalization will wanna have you pay the tax, because you didn't prove that somebody else was paying the tax, the sales tax. You need a business license in California, yes? For the city that you're living in, you can have sole proprietors still need a business license. Even if you're a legal entity, you need a business license. And I make fun of it, if you wanna find out about it, you call 1-800 send it your money. Sacramento, help me out.
That's one question about the business license. So, for example, taking Lily's example of her little kit that she makes for composting.
Yes.
So, for example, if I'm living in Wisconsin, I have to be looking and I say, hey, I wanna buy one of her things in Wisconsin. She can sell me one and she doesn't have to have a license in Wisconsin, right? Cause her internet is like worldwide now, so anyone typically can buy her products, so she wouldn't be responsible for every little.
Correct. So we have changed our jurisdiction from California to Wisconsin. And if she was selling it to somebody who lived in California, she had to get sales tax. If she's selling it to somebody in Wisconsin, I don't believe you have to collect sales tax.
Senator, Oklahoma, I do.
For the what?
Oklahoma, I do.
For Oklahoma? Wow. Yeah, and on the inbound, if you bought it in Wisconsin, you intended to put it in all your stuff, you're moving to California right away, you have to pay sales tax, they call it use tax. So,
And if I give one away, I have to pay the tax on what I gave away.
I disagree,
That's what I was told,
yeah.
on the use tax part of it.
I still disagree. The use tax falls on the user. You're not the user.
Right, but if I'm giving you a free sample, I'm giving you a free sample, and somebody has to pay the tax.
No, they don't.
So it's followed.
My view is they don't.
Okay.
Because there's not been it's a retail sales tax or a use tax, and there has to be a transaction for it to be, fall under one of those two categories. So people in Northern California, Highway 5 in Oregon, you go to the border and they buy all kinds of stuff, you know, I'm not gonna sales tax. They bring it right back over, use tax applies. Because I'm gonna use it in California. In fact, is on the California state tax mine is just sharp as a tack, but everybody else is like,
You actually still program?
no, I don't, I use it extensively.
I always wonder about that.
No, the tax programs are good, but the, knowledge about what's taxable and not taxable is not in the program. Fall in. Yeah, that one, the one call in one, that's into its product, called TurboTax.
Correct.
Yeah, basically, I mean, tax gets complex, and there's subtle nuances. I mean, in the audit we had in the office today, you know, they're thinking about it this way, thinking about it that way, and, you know, we have an opinion and they'll have an opinion. Bye. So what we're talking about is this technical knowledge. And if you're doing the same thing all the time and you've been exposed to how the rules work, it can be pretty accurate. Like, for example, the return we were working on today with IRS was they bought a car for $162,000, put it on a business, and wanted to claim the depreciation expense. Well, if the car is over 60,000, it has to be over 6,000 pounds in order to claim more expenses than this predetermined maximum. And the car only weighed 4,000. So they messed up. They claimed the whole thing, and the car was too light. And they did it with the heavy vehicles because of like trucks and industrial type vehicles. But software did it just perfectly wrong. It was just accurately messed up. And it's gonna get reversed. So, a whole lot of subtleties. But, of course, it's my job to dissuade you, from my bias in, if that's what I do.
I'd rather you use a live body in the first place anyway. Because you've done this year after year for so many years. You see the changes that come about. You see people with different problems. And now I'm dealing with an AI device that have me call in when I have a question.
Yeah, it's on that particular software, it's a connection, and they do, so I played around and talked to them about working for them, but it didn't work well. It is a connection, like a Zoom meeting, into somebody to ask the question. But you have to know to ask the question, that's part of the problem. And somebody with this $162,000 car I'm talking about, evidently, nobody asked the question, how much does it weigh? So it did it perfectly wrong. No problem at all, except the IRS is pretty cheap. What else can I answer?
So for your services, would you be somebody that's good to come to if I wanted to bring investors in and help me figure out like what percentage or
survey to fill out for us?
Do we have a survey? I don't think we do. Do we?
I
Oh, you know
don't.
what we did have?
Oh, yes.
We have,
that.
if you wanna get on a mailing list, like an email.
We'll send out.
Sorry,
Just for you personally? Like-
Yeah. We sell it on the internet, so you get a lot of crap, not just.
I don't know if it was for the school or for,
No,
for you,
the
for
school,
you.
the school is, we already did that one. So let's, if you would like, get on our mail list, that's fine. If not, that's okay too.
You need a seller's permit if you want eBay?
I don't know the real answer to that, but I think eBay doesn't let you out the door without paying a tax.
You're right.
Yeah.
So you don't need us, you don't need one.
Are these blank forms, you got in the appendix?
Yeah.
What website is that?
Let me see if I can, find out. What, we had this set up when we did it with Calga.
Yes.
How do we get, I have a way. It's
a-
on,
on
Google Drive.
So we'll send out I can send out the link to that.
So
Yeah, the one in the
what,
box.
that's your answer, is on the email sheet that we're handing out now, ask and say, please give forms link. And we will send you, we have it stored in Google Drive. And, this was part of an interactive, program. We originally started this with a group of paralegals, all over the state on Zoom, and we had it all set up for that. But we're happy to provide it.
So do you always need a payroll, like no matter what you're doing?
Okay, so if you're working on your own, by yourself, doing all the work, doing high quality, no, you don't need payroll. Now I'm getting too busy, I gotta bring somebody in, the question of payroll comes in then.
You can just add it in.
You can, yeah. And same thing with business entities. You can start out as a sole proprietor. Later on, after it starts taking off, then get a business entity. On the payroll, you end up with payroll services. One that we recommend at times is called Gusto. So you hire somebody and they do the withholding and things, and the 10 W-2s. But it's not required for the owner at all.
So if you go through this packet as kind of like a flow chart of sorts.
Yes.
You say you're pretty much, you've got the bases covered that you need as far as setting up all the different parts of the
What
business.
we've done is we've taken the main features for the different kinds of entities. And then right here on page 2, we gave you $1 million, so you got it made already. But it's a guide for the most common in business. There's all kinds of little specialties and things that you don't need.
Yeah. I guess how do you know you didn't miss anything at the end of the year when taxes are due?
Okay, well, on the tax and missing things, so you set up an accounting system, you get a business checking account, and maybe get QuickBooks or hire a bookkeeper, and all the money that comes in, you categorize it, whether it's taxable or transfers from your savings account and things, and then all the money going out, you ask the question, is this helping my business or not? So if you're buying supplies and it's directly part of what you're doing, and yeah. You decide to have a nice vacation, you put that under distribution. So you track it all, and then you also track any cash income that comes in, and any expenses that you pay by cash, you write those off too. And by tracking all the income and disbursements, you don't really miss things, because everything, you've got it all.
said I could pay into Social Security.
Yeah,
Who determines how much I pay?
on a business, which you have a schedule C, is you end up with, income, expenses by categories, net income. Net income goes over to taxes, ordinary tax, and then that net income gets put on Schedule SE, for self-employment, and it's based on that net income.
Okay.
And it's 15.3% of the net income that goes into your Social Security account. Okay, there's a neat little trick with that schedule in that, let's say you don't have much net income and you have not been on Social Security that much. In order to claim it, you need 40 quarters. So you can elect to have the optional method for self-employment tax. So you only had $100 net, which you need to get more quarters in Social Security. So on that Schedule SE, there's a place where you can elect to get this optional self-employment tax. And for like $240, you get 4 quarters. And it just adds on, and it doesn't cost you hardly anything. And it adds on directly to 4 quarters for Social Security.
That would actually, within a year or two, I could be actually eligible to get the Social Security.
That's what you
paid
want.
in all my life.
If you've been paying it in all your life, you've got over 40 quarters, you already qualify.
Not
You
yet.
just gotta get old enough.
Yeah.
But you're saying you don't have 40 quarters?
I don't, because I worked private industry for a
Okay.
little while, then I worked,
Well, you got it made then. You put the optional self-employment tax method on Schedule SE. 40 quarters, 4 quarters each year, add them on.
I'll take it out of my pocket just to be able to collect that money.
Yeah, well, you will. You definitely will.
Wonderful.
Yeah, you fill in the gaps. I got 40.
Good stuff.
Yeah, or if you're married to a rich gal over 10 years, you can claim on hers. That's a good way to go too. I always recommend that one.
He claimed on her, how did I go again?
You gotta dig deep.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for coming in.
Hmm.
Any more questions? Any more answers?
Thank you.
Anybody have any unique kind of business they wanna start that you want me to comment on? I promise I won't laugh. Okay.
It sounded like you're kind of not into LLCs. Is there a time you do recommend LLCs?
Okay, what I'm,
Or is it
LLCs are okay, they're fine and dandy. What I do is I poke holes in a myth.
That you need one?
The myth is, you're not even a business, man. You don't even count. You don't have an LLC? Who are you? No, that's bullshit.
So,
Okay, so, and the other is, I don't suggest LLCs for no reason. And so, I have an S corp, which has $800 a year. I've had it since '81. I paid over $33,000 to the franchise tax board for nothing. And you get to do that, $800 a year. You need it. You want it. Can insurance do a better job? So I'm not down on LLCs. I'm down on making dumb decisions that don't benefit anybody. Just because of vendor. Yeah. Thanks for coming.
So like if my business was not necessarily something I want, it's like not a full-time thing, just, little something on the side, and it's actually more than one thing, like let's say I wanted to be, let's say I do some consulting on the side.
Yeah.
And then, but I also, completely separate like that, from that is, let's say I make yo-yos.
Okay.
They're not gonna be under the same business.
Why not?
Well, the name wouldn't make sense. Like, you have to come up with a name. I don't think that would make sense, for the two.
Yo-yo consulting?
Those are both hypothetical, but like.
Understand.
Let's say you want to do
Understand.
two
So
completely separate
you can file one fictitious business name and put 2 names on it.
Oh, okay. So you
if
can,
you want.
you can set them up as two separate named businesses?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Fictitious business. What are you doing business as? Me as the person. I'm going to do number one. I'm going to do Yo-Yo Factory. Business name number two. Consulting on how to make $1 zillion.
And do those both come under the same sole proprietor?
Yeah. I mean, you can, or you can separate them.
You can do two sole proprietorships?
You can on your tax return. Because
You
they're
have to
not.
file two different ones though?
You can, or you can merge them.
Okay. It's also called.
And then you file for a new federal ID number, and you can use it on either. You see, I have had a federal ID number forever for my Schedule C, another business. I tried to get another one for another business. IRS says, we're not giving you another one. You already got one. Okay, I guess I can't have two. All right. But you don't need a whole lot of things to keep it all separate. I mean, IRS looks at things like, let's say you had a serious consulting business and you also did boat racing, and then you mixed them. That's a problem, because the boat racing is probably not for profit. It's probably a hobby.
Yeah.
So that one doesn't blend well.
Right. Okay.
So, and definitely don't get two LLCs. $1,600 a year.
Yeah.
You gonna do this class again sometime soon?
Yeah, we get it next month. I don't know.
I can't remember when the next one is, but it's coming up again, yeah.
This is the answer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Krista, do we have an attendance sheet?
Yeah, we have just this. Yeah. So we're having an issue getting into his email, the Mount Diablo email.
I'm looking for the
Every
next,
time,
June 11th.
You'll have to call Denise.
okay, because
She's in charge.
I called
Yeah.
I called Denise, and then she said that I had to call the help desk, and then I called them, and they just said I had to put in a ticket online, but I can't log into my account to put in a ticket.
know.
So I don't
I'd
know.
call Denise again.
Okay, call
And
Denise
just
again.
tell her,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Because I'm
thank you.
sorry, because he didn't get the
It was,
message.
it was so frustrating. what's
Oh,
going
no,
on
I
with
know.
everyone. I'm trying to fix it for him.
He's not the only teacher. I
Yeah.
have the line dancing teacher too.
Oh, really? I was gonna,
Yeah.
because my mom works for the district. I was gonna have her put in a ticket for me. I was like,
Where does she work?
She works at across street from Concord High. at that-
El Dorado.
El Dorado, yes.
Yeah, what does she do?
She's the manager in the kitchen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The
Very
lady
good,
across
yeah.
the street, does the playground
There's a
lunch
problem.
supervision.
Yeah.
And she's worked there forever. But I was a teacher, high school
Yeah.
teacher forever, for 25 years, so.
Yeah, my mom was a substitute doing the substituting when I was
Oh, yeah.
little, and then she went to subbing at in the kitchen, and now she's a manager. So.
Well, good for her.
She was school teacher 30 years.
Well, okay.
She's in CalPERS.
Then I have everything in